we've arrived at acute myocardial infarction. If you remember, we had discussed the two different types of myocardial infarction, so I need to make sure that we are clear about where we're headed next. There were the transmural type, and you tell me, if it's transmural, the entire wall has been affected, and so therefore you would find your obstruction where exactly? Is it an artery or an arteriole? Now, if you remember that functional anatomical picture that I showed you of the left ventricular wall, and that's what we called it, then the coronary artery was on the superficial aspect of the wall, on the surface, by the pericardium. Thus, if the coronary artery was to be affected, then the entire wall underneath was, so therefore you then refer to this as being a transmural infarct. So, as we move forward here, and when you see NSTEMI and STEMI, this refers to whether or not your patient is suffering from a non-ST elevation myocardial infarction, and by that we're referring to an ST depression, or if it's an ST elevation myocardial infarction, and if it is a transmural of any type, and I walked you through the three major blood vessels in our earlier discussion with left anterior descending, with left circumflex, and also right coronary artery, those would then result in an ST elevation myocardial infarction. So now we're at a point where you need to make sure that you put all of this together, please. As we had discussed earlier, if the atherosclerotic plaque becomes large enough, and as you see in the illustration here, there will be rupture. And if there is rupture, then understand that the central necrotic material, including LDL and such, escapes into and embolizes distally into the coronary artery, resulting in complete occlusion. It may result in a transmural type of infarct if it's artery. Once again, what kind of myocardial infarction would that be if it's transmural? ST elevation, depending on which artery. Can I ask you a question? If it's left circumflex, which leads are you referring to? Lateral leads, which include, please, V5, V6, AVL, and lead 1. And these are things that you discussed earlier in physiology, and these are things that we will continue discussing as we move through our lecture series. Please do not panic when you don't see certain points on the slide. It's just the fact that we need to discuss all of this so that things come to life, and we will repeat and repeat and repeat the information until it becomes extremely familiar to you. Now, if the coronary artery has been infarcted, then we talked about how it would be, let's say, something like acute myocardial infarction. Death of the tissue is a coagular necrosis, isn't it? The architecture is preserved. Why is that? Because of lactic acid production. About 1/3 of the patients with AMI, unfortunately, would not survive. Why? Perhaps due to arrhythmia. You completely messed up. The conduction system may result in cardiac death.